I'm the New York State Maple Specialist in the Department of Natural Resources at Cornell University. And I'm not an agritourism specialist, so I'll just add that caveat, but I am a maple specialist and I've spent a lot of time around maple events. And so today I'm going to talk about more what makes maple production attractive and well suited to agritourism events. And just share the fact that, a lot of maple farms actually generate a huge proportion of their annual sales at on-farm events like Maple Weekend and other agritourism events. So I'm going to discuss what attracts participants to these events, how to capitalize on the aspects of maple that make it attractive and interesting to people, some tips for running a successful event, and some common pitfalls to avoid. So, as you may know, maple syrup just holds a special place in the hearts and the imaginations of the American public. It's a unique tradition in the Northeast of the United States, and it really draws the public interest every year. We get a lot of media inquiries and a lot of inquiries from the public every year. So that's the time of year where people focus on it. So we know people are interested, but I'd like to take a closer look of what specifically draws customers in and how we can build upon those points of interest to make a successful event. So one point of interest is simply the role of maple sugaring in American culture and history. And I think most people are at least somewhat aware of the fact that maple sugaring is a process that was learned from Native Americans and was done throughout the history of the United States. But they might not be more aware of the fact that maple syrup was the primary sweetener used through the early 1900s until it was displaced by commercial sweeteners like cane sugar and high fructose corn syrup. But learning about that history is really fascinating for people. And in addition to the more general facts about the history, it's important to note that almost every small farm in the United States or in the Northeast made maple sugar in the past. So if you can make some connection to the actual sugaring activities that took place on your farm in the past, that's especially interesting to people who are viewing or visiting your specific sugar bush. So consider making some displays about the history of sugaring, especially if they relate to your sugar house, to have available for people to look at your event. Now, another interesting point is that maple sugaring operations are places that are really peaceful and beautiful. Other agricultural enterprises don't necessarily have those attributes. They often involve muddy fields, livestock, which can be smelly because there's manure and things like that. But maple, by contrast, has scenes of forest beauty and the kind of the peaceful rustic setting of the sugar house. So building upon those attributes, those aesthetic attributes, can be helpful in making people satisfied with your event. So making your trails go to nice viewpoints in your woods, whether they're related to the maple sugaring operation directly or not, can be attractive to visitors. And also really take a close look at your sugar house and think about how appealing it is to visit. Sugar houses are built to be functional on one hand, but for these types of events, they really need to be welcoming to visitors with good aesthetics, like good lighting, good decor, and a nice clean presentation of your products. And if that's not inside of your wheelhouse, like if you're not into the interior decorating thing, it might be helpful to find someone who is to help you out with that. Another factor that makes maple well suited to agritourism events is just the popularity of maple products. Nearly everybody likes maple syrup, but it's worth looking at the details of market data to better understand customer demographics and which products are the most popular. So this data, and what I'm showing here on the screen in particular, indicates that people spend not a huge amount of money, but it's not insignificant every year. But that the groups that are most likely to spend money on maple are that 35 to 44 age group. And really what this points to me is that families are the ones that are going to spend the most on maple products. The older crowds seems to spend less, and wealthier households obviously spend more. Another really interesting fact is that in general, people spend less than half of their maple syrup money on just pure maple syrup. they tend to spend over half on other maple products. So that can be traditional value-added products like maple candy and maple cream, but also includes things that are a little more complex, like multi-ingredient confections. Think maple-coated nuts or maple barbecue sauce and things like that. So it's really helpful, I think, to think about what container sizes sell best and having also a mix of products, a diversity of products to offer so that you can get more sales when people come to your sugar house. Now, if you're interested in looking at this data yourself, there's a really useful website that you can go to. And after I'm done with my presentation, I'll drop the link in the chat. And the site is the Maple Data Dashboard. It's made available by the Vermont Department of Agriculture. And I just have a static shot of the home screen on this slide, but you can actually go through and change all the parameters: gender, age, region, ethnicity, household size, and a bunch of other factors, and really look at how maple sales do with those particular demographic groups. Another interesting facet of maple production is just the processes involved. People are really fascinated by all these almost strange phenomena, like the pressurization cycle in trees that causes sap to flow is really unusual in nature, and people are interested in that. Also, just the whole process of how tapping is done, how the tubing or buckets are set up, how reverse osmosis works, or seeing an evaporator run, or all the amazing transformations that take place with value-added products. You know, that moment when maple sugar goes from a liquid into a solid with a puff of steam. Those are all things that are really interesting to your visitors. And those can be incorporated into demonstrations or displays that will hold the interest of visitors when they're at your sugar house. Another thing that's helpful about maple for agritourism is just the fact that maple production takes place during a time of the year when there's not much else to do. During the pandemic, we saw the impacts of cabin fever and how restless people get and how eager they are to get back out in the world when they're able to. So these types of events can be used to really motivate people and get them excited about shaking off the dust of winter and getting out to a sugar house and enjoying this traditional rite of spring. Now, it's also important to consider, what are visitors actually going to do when they get to your maple farm? The more engaged they are, the longer they'll stay. The longer they stay, the more likely they are to make purchases. So some things you might want to consider adding are just activities, you know, things that they can actually put their hands on and do. Simple things like, if you have an old stump, you can have your tapping drill and some tapping bits and let them drill their own holes and tap some bits in. Or cut the tubing and add some fittings so that they can get a feel for how tubing works. Demonstrations are also really popular. Even if you're just boiling water in your evaporator, just having something happening, that gives people a point of interest that they can stand around and ask questions and observe what's happening in the sugar house. Grading is another good one. I think a lot of people are unclear about what maple grades are. So if you can actually grade some samples or have the equipment out so that they can look through the grading equipment themselves, that can be really educational and interesting to visitors. Now, this is hard sometimes because in an agritourism event, people just kind of come and go as they please. But you can have an ongoing tour or scheduled tours of your sugar bush or sugar house, or have a self-guided tour. That sometimes makes it easier for people. So having a tour really keeps people on site longer. And last but not least, it's always nice to give something away so they have something to take home, especially the kids. It reminds them of their visit, reminds them that they can keep purchasing pure maple products year round, not just during these agritourism events. And something that will help you plan a successful event is understanding the modern maple consumer. If you've been in the maple industry for a long time, you might not be aware that the demographics and the characteristics of our consumers have actually changed quite a bit. Consumers today just don't have a lot of direct knowledge of maple sugaring, and this is largely due to the long slump in maple syrup production that happened from the 1950s through the early 2000s. So people just don't have that direct connection, and a lot of people today didn't grow up on farms. So just be aware that your consumers don't have a lot of knowledge in general about maple syrup. A recent study done by the New York State Maple Producers Association, in fact, found that only 15% of consumers can accurately identify pure maple syrup. That's a pretty low percentage. And then you can add to that 26% admit to not even knowing what maple syrup is. And out of the remaining 59%, a lot think they know what maple syrup is, but when they have pancake syrup, the imitation stuff, and real maple syrup put in front of them, a lot of them can't tell the difference. So it's important to be aware that there is some education that needs to be done on the farm, or that it's helpful to do in order to tell consumers what makes your product special and why they should spend the extra dollars to get the real stuff versus imitation pancake syrup. And it's also worth considering what consumers like about maple syrup and maple products, which may not align with what you like about maple syrup or what you think customers should like. So learn about what customers actually like and meet them where they are and market from there. Some things that consumers are not persuaded by, according to this study by the Maple Producers Association, is the healthier sugar argument, which was surprising. A lot of them are not influenced by the argument that maple sugar is healthier than cane sugar because it has antioxidants and minerals. They also don't like being scolded for eating imitation maple syrup, so that's something to keep in mind. What were they persuaded by? Well, when asked, most consumers were persuaded by the fact that maple syrup is a pure, single ingredient product. And they're also interested in the fact that it can be used in a variety of ways, more than just topping ice cream or pancakes. So if you have access to recipes that you can put out that show different ways to use maple, that can be interesting to consumers. Now, there are some pitfalls that I think are kind of specific to maple agritourism events, and I want to go over those so you can avoid these common mistakes. So even though maple syrup is almost universally popular, success of your event is not guaranteed, right? And the very first and most important thing is getting people to your sugar house. And the problem is that sugar houses are often in remote areas. They often have confusing directions. Sometimes the GPS doesn't send people to the right place, or people simply don't have GPS signal for their cell phones. So when you advertise your event, it's really important to provide really clear directions, maybe even advise people in your advertisements that their GPS may not work if that's an issue in your area, and just provide detailed directions and maps. And if you can put signs along the road pointing the way, that's helpful too. And last but not least, it's really good to direct people about where to park at your sugar house once they finally do get to the sugar house. I've been to events before where that wasn't clear, and it creates a lot of confusion and frustration. Another big pitfall is failure to anticipate seasonal conditions and the impact that vehicle traffic and foot traffic can have on conditions. Maple season often coincides with mud season, so things get sloppy real quick. It might look good even the day before the event, and then the weather warms up and a few cars drive in and out of your parking area. People walk around a little bit, and next thing you know, you have a big mud pit. So if you're planning on having people park in a field or some other area that's not normally a parking lot, you really might want to consider surfacing that area with stone. Also, walkways, you might want to consider surfacing them with wood chips. And as a last resort, it's sometimes helpful to have a few bales of hay on hand to kind of cover up muddy spots as they develop. Crowd management is something else to think about, especially for big events. Parking areas can quickly become congested or confusing. So consider having some clear signage about the direction of traffic flow, how people should park, or even if you have someone available, have them out there directing traffic, because that really eases people's minds when they're just told or directed exactly where to park, and there's a clear sign indicating the exit. Once people exit their vehicles and they're on your farm on foot, it's also helpful to direct them with signs there, signs that point to where to go. And even better yet, if you can organize your tourism event so that there's a sequence of stops so people can go in a specific direction, stops 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then end at the cash register. that's sometimes helpful too. It prevents confusion with crowds. People get to see all the sites, they don't miss anything, and they get to end right where they should, where they can buy their maple syrup and other confections and head home. Now, something else to keep in mind is that maple syrup is a food product. It needs to be made in accordance with the highest standards of safety and quality. And, gone are the days of the dirt floored sugar shack. We're in a different era where maple sugaring is a modern food safe practice. And a lot of people who rely on maple production for their full-time income have worked really hard to convey the message and uphold the image of safety and quality. So if you're unsure about the grade standards or FDA label law or commercial kitchen requirements, if you're making value-added products with multiple ingredients or things like that, I really urge you to just review those requirements and those legal requirements and just make sure you're in compliance. What is also helpful, if you want to learn more, is if you go to cornellmaple.com and go to our Grown and Certified module, you can download for free the Maple Food Safety Manual, which has a lot of really good tips about how to make your sugar house nice and clean and food safe. And I'll also put that link in the chat after my presentation. One final consideration for visitors is just safety, right? Safety is always paramount. Sugar houses are dangerous places in some ways. They have hazardous areas that could lead to serious injuries. So protect your guests by doing a walkthrough and looking for those hazards, and install barriers or other countermeasures to prevent people from getting hurt. If you want people to look inside the evaporator and you're worried about the hot surfaces and things like that, a lot of people build little platforms that allow guests to walk up the platform and from a safe distance look down into the evaporator. So definitely keep people away from those hot surfaces. And slip hazards are also a really huge hazard. So just make sure you don't have any of those wet spots that are slippery or anything like that that could injure your guests. Now, a really popular event is Maple Weekend. And Michelle, I think, is going to talk a little bit more about this, but the official Maple Weekend event in New York State is an event that is sponsored by the New York State Maple Producers Association. And it's for members of that association. And members in the association pay to participate. And there's been some confusion about this in the past because maple producers in general see that Maple Weekend is coming up and they think that's a time to just go out and put up their sign and invite guests in. And while the association doesn't have any type of intellectual property rights for Maple Weekend that would prevent you from doing that, it can create some bad feelings with your neighbors who are members of the association and who pay money for the promotion of that event. So if you want to participate in the official Maple Weekend, which this year is on March 16th and 17th, and again on the 23rd and 24th, then I urge you to join the Maple Producers Association and sign up to participate. And then you'll get the full benefits of that event, and it will keep you from running afoul of any of your neighbors. So those are the quick tips and some of the pitfalls from the perspective of a maple specialist. So now I'm going to turn it over to someone with a little more background in agritourism. So I'll turn it over to Michelle for her presentation.
Talk to you a little bit about agritourism, maple, and Maple Weekend. And, maple syrup production obviously is something that's been going on for a really long time. I'm located in Lewis County, and maple is incredibly big here. You know it's maple season when you start seeing all of the sugar houses and the steam coming, and it's just something that's part of the tradition up here and part of the culture in Lewis County. And so the governor recognizes that. She sees it as something that's really key to agritourism and the economy, and we see that here in Lewis County. Maple gives you an opportunity to really promote what's going on. And when you're promoting something, you're pulling in people, you're pulling in key legislators, you're pulling in folks who are involved in being able to help you promote your maple and what's going on, and also help you promote other events that are happening. And one of them is Maple Weekend. It provides, as Aaron was talking about, a great opportunity to educate the public, who are the consumers who are going to buy what's going on. And you're inviting them into your sugar house or your operation. And one thing is, yes, they're going to buy that maple syrup, but you're also hoping that they're going to buy other value-added products that you have. And so you're selling those products, and you're hoping that they're going to become steady customers that are going to come all year long and come into your facility. And it's also an economic driver for the county. We've done some surveys over the years in Lewis County, which really affects several counties around us, about Maple Weekend, to see what is the effect for the restaurants, what is the effect for even the gas stations, and all of the other businesses that are affected by Maple Weekend, and see that it does bring people into the county, that it brings people to the bed and breakfasts to the county, and they spend money and they come back year after year because they want to go and experience everything that goes on with Maple Weekend. And we are fortunate, we're near Fort Drum, so we have a lot of new folks who want to experience Maple Weekend. So, as Aaron was talking about, what special things are you offering them? A walking tour of your sugar bush. We have some very traditional and we have some very modern sugar houses, horse-drawn wagon rides, tractor rides, tasting samples like jack wax. That's something like that. We work very closely with the state association to make sure that we're promoting with social media about what sugar houses are open. We encourage all of our sugar houses to have, opportunities for self-promotion with signs and things that people can get. We have tree tapping. Those are very big up here. We've been doing them for years. We invite our assembly folks and our state senators to come for tree tappings. We hold them in all the counties, and they enjoy it. I have an assembly person who's been around for a long time, and he's like, "Where are we going this year? Where are we happening?" And we've had some changes in the weather, and I've also had them plant a tree because the weather was too warm and we weren't actually going to be tapping a tree, and the season had already gone by. It also, when I look at value added, we've had folks really think outside the box, which is really important. And we've had the maple cheesecake dip and put everything together so you can say to a consumer, wow, here's everything you need to do to make a maple cheesecake dip, and has all the instructions and has, everything they need to go home and make it and put something together. These are actually maple shaped sugar cookies, and then it is maple on top, and it's actually you can spread it, or you dip your cookies into this icing that is maple icing, and the sprinkles actually on top are little sprinkles that are shaped like maple leaves. It was incredibly good. I got some for my family and they loved it. And this particular sugar house could not keep up with supplying these maple cookies, and then, the maple icing. People loved it. And she was just making these as fast as she could. And it was the packaging, and people loved it and, went home with it. I have had an opportunity to really promote maple syrup and look at maple syrup in a lot of different places here in the United States and overseas. And it's really important to think about the presentation. What are you presenting and how does it look? And it can be a New York bottle, it can look different. And I think it's really important to think about, how does your maple syrup, it needs to meet all the requirements for the label. That's incredibly important, and it has to, has to be legal. But how does your maple syrup look? And does it look different than the person next door? So when they come to your particular store, your particular sugar house, your particular facility, wow, they look at it and they say, wow, this looks really different. And I would like to take that home with me, and I'm willing to spend the money for that maple syrup product. And so you want something that looks a little bit different, and something that's just unique. I enjoy taking pictures of maple syrup and all the different maple syrup products, and making sure that we are, getting that, and all the different things. And nothing's better than going around Maple Weekend and trying to try different items and see what's new and different out there. I encourage you to think outside of just the maple season. There's the holidays. This is a wonderful time of the year to be promoting maple and inviting people to come to your facility and walk through and promote, having them come and be part of what's going on. Halloween, I did not find my Halloween picture, but I actually have sugar cakes or molded maple sugar that are shaped in all different kinds of Halloween items. They look like, pumpkins and bats, and they are very, very popular. We also have Easter ones. So those kind of special events that you can think about. And so it's just not promoting maple during the maple season. It's a year round that you can do that. The other one that is an incredibly big, big thing is having wedding favors. That is very much taken off. There is all kinds of small maple that you can bottle. Now you got to be very serious about it, because it takes a lot to bottle these small ones. And then you've got to label it, and you've got to see what does the bride want, or the groom, or whoever's asking for this, the mother of the bride. What are those wedding favors, and what do they want on it? And you've got to customize it. Huge business out there. Or maybe it's having them come to your facility in the backdrop, and it's in the fall, and it's a beautiful time of the year to have an outdoor wedding, and they're having it at your sugar house, and they're using your facility to have something like that. The agritourism part of doing something like that in a barn is just, the sky's the limit. The other thing that's going on with maple, and there's some guidelines and regulations, is what happens with alcohol. This is a growler, and you're looking at a maple wine, and then you're also looking at a maple liqueur. Those items are very popular, and it's something that we've really seen a lot of interest, and a growing interest with agritourism, with sampling. And actually, it's like a whole nother avenue that you could look at with agritourism and maple, and going that direction, and some beautiful bottles and designs that go along with it. When I look at maple agritourism, it can be as simple as adding a basket at your local bed and breakfast during Maple Weekend. We've had a lot of our producers who work in conjunction with a bed and breakfast, and they put together a small maple basket that has just a few things in it. It has some maple cream, some maple sugar, and some molded sugar in it, and then a small bottle of maple syrup. Or it could be something very elaborate, as doing a festival that the whole community is involved in. We see a lot of our sugar houses been involved in a pancake breakfast. This is one that's actually at the International Maple Center that's in Krogan. but you could be tabling an event. You could be at the county fair and have a sugar house. Maple festivals. There is a lot of spring and summer restaurants that are connected to this very unique all natural product. And they are actually basing everything they do on maple. When I look at, there is a Highland County Festival, it's in Virginia. It is the longest running maple festival in the United States, and it's based in Virginia. The income that they bring in from this event is just phenomenal. This festival generates between 1.3 to $2 million every year in this small rural county. And they bring back people year after year that come, and it's good for the maple producers down there, and it's good for the county. They actually use this maple festival to support a lot of their county run programs. So it's very reasonable to think about what kind of maple festivals are going on out there. There's ones in Quebec. I've had the opportunity to really explore some places where you actually, it's in the season and you can go to a restaurant and sit down, and it's all maple based. And you can get some maple products that you can't even buy in the United States. And you can have those maple products. And, it's, to me, it's always unique. I'm always looking at what else is out there that is a maple product, and you can have that food, and you can buy some products and try things. And Quebec has it's a very rich history that has anything to do with maple syrup. There's a Vermont Maple Festival. It's the end of April. They celebrate the maple harvest. Even in your own counties in New York State, there's a lot of open farm day events in your county or your region that you could be involved in and promote your maple, and let the county or the extension office or the chamber run that open farm day, and then you could be part of that and promote your particular maple operation. And you say, well, that's in the summertime, but you can still do so many things that are maple. Have people try maple syrup, have them try a little piece of sugar cake, have them try, maple floss or maple cotton candy, whatever you want to call it, and have them have that experience and get connected to you. If you Google just maple agritourism, there's all kinds of ideas out there, and that you can just connect with even one small little piece, and that would open up and help you think in a much broader area than just selling maple syrup. We have a lot of very classic sugar houses. You're seeing one that's from the 1800s, and it still operates today. It has concrete floors. But they do horse-drawn wagon rides. And then we have some very modern ones that are state-of-the-art, but they all offer some kind of presentation. They all are very conscious of how you get into the facility, how people walk on the paths, how do you park, things that Erin was talking about. I always encourage all of my producers to have staff name tags. Very simple to do nowadays. You can buy them at Staples. You use a lanyard, and then people know who to talk to, right? And they want to hear about your farm's maple story. They want to just talk to the people who are making that maple syrup and how it's made. And I don't care if you're bringing in your brother and your sister, your aunt, your uncle, just make sure everybody's informed and everybody knows what's going on and how it's being made and how it's being done. And, that way, when the public comes into your facility, everybody is telling the same story and understands it. And that's what's really important. So they're being able to say, here's how the maple syrup's being made, and what is that story about your farm.